各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看 JxJ 论坛，由我 Jimmy 妈马健与我们的老朋友与好朋友 Jim Noteware 为我们去讨论这个礼拜的时事。Jim,
Hello, Jimmy.
it's been a quick half month, 2 weeks gone, blink of an eye.
It is. And time is going to keep going faster through the holiday season.
I can't believe Christmas is next weekend, and that is just crazy.
Yeah. Every year it's the same thing for me. I don't anticipate it coming. Here it comes, and they say I'm not ready for Christmas. And every year I feel the same way. It comes and goes. And I had a great time, but what happened?
It's story. I mean, when you're busy and productive, and your mind, body, spirit is in one, that's what it's like. Your life,
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you slow down, that's not good. I've heard so many stories of people that when you do nothing, then what is there to look forward to?
Yeah.
I shared your story from 2 weeks ago with some folks that are in hard times that needs a miracle or wants to hear one.
Yeah.
It really helps because, I adopted a family last week. Every year during Christmas, we do that. And we bring the kids and we share. And we know that we call it excuse my language, we call it the sperm lottery. We want the sperm lottery to be born and raised here in the United States. Some people didn't. If we were born in, say, Afghanistan or Syria, I mean, good Lord, we could try. What can you do when the overall situation is no matter how good you are or how much you work. That's what I think is a farce when people say work harder and this generation is lazy, or sometimes you cannot. I mean, I'm not making excuses, but it's the circumstance. It really is the infrastructure, the society that you're in has to work. And we keep saying that this is the best place to be because everybody else, whether they're sanctioned, they want to come here.
Yeah, well, and it's not a coincidence. It's not just good. It is good fortune, but the guys that brung us here have done a pretty good job. The founding fathers, a lot of the moves that people made, we say we stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's really true. And you can look around the world and you can see that other societies have not done nearly so well. And they've others, you can look around the world and say you've squandered other opportunities. And one of the things I like about the US is not only that we have US exceptionalism and all of that, but we try to share it. We let other people in here, and we provide our leadership around the world. Not everybody likes that all the time, but on the balance, it's done pretty well.
Well, your statement will create a lot of pushback when we talk about south of the border right now. So there's no, I do not provide a solution. I do not say it's right or wrong. It's a problem, which side you're on. But that statement you said, we used to let everyone in, but I can tell you one thing. You look at the way that our society, whether it's our constitution or our laws, or even our business practice, we have faith in people in business. We allow people to do the right thing until they don't. So we're always in catch up now. For a perfect example is FTX, right? What happened in Bahamas? So Bankman, he kept saying he won't be arrested, and sure enough, he got arrested, and it's a massive fraud. But there was a running joke amongst the industry that Generation X is so lazy because Enron, they went out their way to pay lawyers a lot of money to set up special purpose vehicles to hide their graft, offshore accounts, different names. But look at what Mr. Bankman did. He wrote checks to himself. He used QuickBooks where everything is out. I mean, literally, there's nothing to hide. And he's making statements to the media. Just the lawyers are sweating. So different generation, or maybe they're so arrogant and so entitled to think that what they're doing is, no, they know what they're doing is wrong. They do.
Right.
This go-go years of the last 10 years, because the overall market has lifted everybody up. SEC just announced the rest of a group of so-called influencers on Twitter, the classic pump and dump. These are young men that generated 100 million in revenue by duping their followers. I have friends that fall for that. I have friends that know that these are day traders and that they're just trying to jump on and jump off. But that's not what it should be, and that's not good for this entire generation of first-time traders in the last few years. They learned their lesson. We all did. You paid your dues, so did I.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it seems like it's the same fraud. Every generation, 10, 20 years, it's the same thing. Greed.
It's the same thing. I mean, it was Bernie Madoff, and it was Enron, and then there was WorldCom, and there were a whole bunch of others. And these are the ones we know about. I'm sure there's a lot of small time grifters out there that just don't make the news.
Well, I can look at one of the biggest grifters of our time, Mr. Trump. His time is up too. He's grifted for 4-5 decades, and now his time is come.
Yeah.
He will pay for his business mispractice. Let's put it that way. This is about his business.
The thing that amazes me about what he's doing is when you're in a hole, quit digging. He just keeps digging.
Well, he got away with it for so long, right? It worked before. It worked.
But it seems like he's willing to trade doing things incorrectly for the attention that he gets when he behaves that way. In other words, he's driven by the attention, even when it's not good.
True narcissist. It's a true narcissistic sociopath.
It's just, and you can measure it by how many people, like myself, used to be a supporter, but after a while, one by one, we're saying enough is enough is enough is enough. We've got to go in a completely different direction.
No. I understand you supported him. A lot of people support him because of what he represented. This a group of Americans that was not represented. He hijacked the values and misrepresented himself, and we understand that. But his business practice has always been known on Wall Street that he borrows and he uses your money, and if he profits, he keeps it. If he doesn't, you're stuck with the bill. And this is everyone knows, but people still keep doing it because they fall for his image. You know what? Locally, Jim, you're a developer. We see people here too. People around us are like that. They do have wealth, there's no doubt, but the true wealth. People that have real estate, real tangible assets. A lot of them are like yourself, very, very, how do I say this? There's no need to flaunt, which I get it. When you flaunt, maybe you could attract more investments. Maybe you could make it to the next step. But I know a lot of people around us that are just grand, showmen. They're showmen, and that's how they attract investments to keep building.
Yeah. I mean, as we've said it in several different ways, there's always somebody that's trying to gain their advantage by taking from somebody else. I've always thought the best way to win is to have the other guy win too, have a win-win situation.
Jim, we're thought to do that. We're saying that everyone gets my motto, right? Everyone gets to eat. I can make less now, but we can make longer term where everyone can share. But I'm telling you, nowadays people is very rare now. Maybe we're in a different generation, but there's that, they just want to get it done. They disregard. The way they say it is their reputation, they don't care because there's a lot of people in this city, this town, this state, this country, this world. Or they say it doesn't matter because as long as they're wealthy, as long as they make it, and it's sad because we don't have the same structure. We go back to the same thing. The traditional family, the traditional structure, the traditional, whether it's your faith, or whatever it is, that there's no more, there's no boundaries.
Yeah. And I'm afraid that we're losing so much with the trends you're talking about. And the trends are very pervasive. It's hard to argue otherwise. Everything you talked about is happening, and it's a major, major erosion, and it's going to hurt a lot more people.
What's scary with social media is that the censorship, right?
Yeah.
The flaunting, the comparing, the want, the need. The whole generation grew up on it, thinking that as long as they have the yacht or have the plane or have the building, doesn't matter how you get there. But it does matter. It really does matter.
The silver lining in that cloud that you're talking about, I think, the extent of social media is beginning to decline, at least in the United States. It may not be elsewhere in the world, say like places like China or Brazil, but it is here for a variety of reasons.
It is. You're right.
And so I hope it goes down, and I hope we can recover some of our values in the process. I think it's going to be harder to do the latter, though, because once trust is lost, it's very, very difficult to regain. And I think we've got a lot of rebuilding to do.
Every time we talk about this, I worry for my children and their children. But you know what? I'm sure our grandparents and parents said the same for our generation. Yeah. It will always balance out, I hope. But you're right. Social media is segmented. It serves its own purpose now. Facebook's not the same. Twitter's gone basically because Mr. Musk has taken over. TikTok is banned in a lot of places. Instagram is not the same, and YouTube. So there's a lot of different. So basically segmented, where it's specialized. Certain age group use certain social media, and it serves different purposes now. Instead, like before, well, everyone's on Twitter, everyone's on Instagram. It's not the same. So let's go back to what really is on our mind with the Feds raising their rate yesterday again, little bit less than expected. So the inflation number is actually down, but I still keep the stance of that it's going to be a very rough year next year. But the fact that the market doesn't have around this year. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the inflation rate is down. I think people think what that means is prices are recovering, prices are going down. Prices are not going down. They're still going up at a very big rate. It's just that rate is a little smaller than it was a couple of months ago. But it's still doing great damage. And the other thing that nobody's really talking about is we're beginning to get into an inflationary spiral. And by that, I mean, we're having wage push now. Many people are getting increases in their wages, either because their employer gives it to them or because they're able to change jobs, or whatever the case may be. But that in turn is pushing inflation higher. Those wage increases are not large enough for anyone to overcome the inflationary pace. But at the same time, they're building in the expectation and the momentum that inflation is going to continue for some time, which means that it's going to take longer and probably more pain to solve it. So I'm glad that the little improvement has been made, but we're a long way from getting out of this problem. And it's still very, very fragile. Some of the biggest inputs like energy are still there. And I've talked to any number of economists over the last month or two, and they all talk about how the economic problems are turning into social problems because the people who are hurt the most by all of this are at the low end of the scale. And it's creating problems in healthcare, it's creating problems in housing, it's creating problems in education, all the way. And most of those areas, healthcare and education, have problems anyway. This is just exacerbating them. And it definitely is. But no economist that I know everybody understands what I'm about to say, but almost no one wants to talk about it. And it's a very severe issue. And that is the biggest loser in all of this is and will continue to be the US government. The cost of rolling over the federal debt, let alone the increase in federal debt every year because of our ever widening deficits. Our debt is pyramiding out of control. And the only way that we've been able to survive this is by continuing to borrow at an increasing rate. In other words, the mathematics are getting worse and worse. And sitting here 2 years ago, the cost of debt for the federal treasury was about 1%. Now it's 4% or more. And what this means is at some point soon, interest on the federal debt will be the single largest expense budget item within the federal budget. And once that goes, it's likely to get out of control. And we're getting very, very close to that. And I think I mentioned to you, Jimmy, on this show a couple of weeks ago, I was in England in October, at the end of October. And it was right when Liz Truss had to resign because of her failed experiment as the new prime minister. And she didn't create the problem. She just didn't attempt to solve it very well. But that calamity exposed what life is going to be like for most of the rest of the world, certainly the developing world, but also the developed world, because of this massive debt and living beyond our means, combined with inflation. And the only way to cure inflation is to increase interest rates, which in turn slows down the economy. So you have all this perfect storm coming. My point in all of this is, for a couple of weeks, we had the opportunity to see the future, and we know now what the end of the road looks like, and it ain't going to be pretty. And no, all the economists talk about that austerity is a terrible way to solve the problem, but ultimately, no one has a better solution. The only way to stimulate yourself out of a problem is to borrow more. But now we have borrowing is the problem. Borrowing is not the solution. Borrowing is the problem. And so I just wish people would regain their sanity and get some perspective. But on the other hand, I'm pretty tolerant when I look around, because most people are having a harder and harder time just getting through the day. It's a very difficult situation.
No,
and a greater and greater share of the economic pyramid is losing their way.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm actually very anxious. I am anxious. I feel like we're in this, stuck in this cycle, in this painfulness. You know, before we could keep printing. We could, everybody else could fail first. All the economies. We control the dollar, oil. Did you see what happened in Saudi Arabia last week? They do no longer use just dollar pegged to crude. They're going to accept.
Well, they no longer use the dollar exclusively. They're using other currencies, namely the renminbi. That's what made the big news. Is they're working with China, and of course paying renminbi to buy or accepting renminbi to sell oil.
That's not good for us. That is
no,
not.
it's not.
Competitiveness is.
Yeah. But that's not just an economic move on their part. It's really a political move as well as an economic one. But either way, it's bad.
But they couldn't do that political move 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, in the 70s. They could not do that.
No.
Have we spoiled everybody else to make them so entitled? Have we lost our, you know what? That is going to be for a different show, because we could talk about the Middle East all day. Right. And it's not going to solve anything, because we already know what the Crown Prince did. We know how he's embarrassed President Biden. He was there. He made a show of accepting Mr. Xi in a very different way. So,
yeah,
we know. And Jim, what if you were the Fed chairman? If you were, what? We know, we talked about this last year. We know pulling the Band-Aid is going to be painful, and we know the next 2 years will be tough.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see? What else could we do now that could not prolong or shorten, because it's a process. It naturally will take 2 years. It'll be painful, we know. But what do you see that we're not doing, or that we should be doing?
I think the big problem that the Fed has right now is they are late. They never should have allowed the situation to get to where it was. And when they finally got to where it was, they just reversed course so abruptly and are on the move. I think actually, if I were sitting there with a vote right now, I would have voted for the 50 basis points instead of 75. But I would say we are going to continue and going to continue. What I would do is to try to look throughout the economy and increase supplies of things, try to get the federal government to reduce its fiscal stimulus, because right now we have monetary brakes and fiscal open throttle. The administration on the fiscal side is not behaving in concert with the Fed. They're making the Fed's job harder, and by doing that, but the Democratic philosophy is we want to get people more and more dependent on the government, and we want to solve climate change by eliminating the petrochemical industry, fossil fuels, all of which are extraordinarily harmful in the short term for the economy. And but it's like everything else politically that we do. We no longer really communicate with each other. No longer do we try to persuade each other. We talk past each other, and it's very, very harmful. So what I would try to do if I were the Fed is to go jawbone the administration and say we have to behave in concert. It doesn't do any of us any good to keep opposing each other.
I do not agree with much of what you said, because I feel like we could prevent climate change and still be able to avoid this short-term view on losing our competitiveness and going into a recession and keeping inflation down. You're right. The government has stepped in too late. And you're right. Not big government doesn't work all the time. But the perception of a certain party, the left, training people to be dependent on handouts, is not entirely true. Just like when we say the right is pro-business and pro, say, immigrants, is also not true. Perhaps 30 years ago it is. It's not absolutes anymore. That's the problem, right? We go extreme and we don't work together. We don't cross the aisle and have any consensus. Now,
right.
But looking back, we started with Reaganomics. We keep talking about it. The right or the left, even the majority, even moderates, all of us we've been educated in thought since school, since out in society. The Reaganomics works, that we can enjoy the fruits of his labor, that we're here today because Reaganomics. But economists the majority would agree that no, Reaganomics has failed. It did not trickle down. It created these super corporations that are immune to any recession or any inflation. If you look at the numbers of the Forbes 500, the richest got richer. It really has, because taxation cannot keep up with these offshore and this corporation tax breaks. No matter what, the majority of Americans, 30, 40 years ago, a teacher's salary, a mechanic's salary, an electrician could make a good living, could raise a family. That's not possible anymore.
Well, there's more to it than that. Jimmy, let's do this. Let's tape next Thursday.
Okay.
Into the holiday weekend and look at the holiday weekend with anticipation of great joy as Christians that we do. And then let's the week between Christmas and New Year's, the Thursday just before New Year's, let's talk about the for next year.
The economic outlook for next year?
For 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, the economic outlook for 2023. Because I think that's the future that we're all going to walk into.
Okay, you want to do this next Thursday or the Thursday after that, right before New Year's?
Both. I think we should talk about the holiday weekend and again give thanks next week, and then the weekend after that, let's look forward to 2023.
That's perfect, Jim. Thank you for logging in today. We thank our audiences. Thank you. I mean, 2 weeks ago, it was a scare. And obviously, it was a miracle because good things happen to good people. You came out, no side effects, healthy.
No, no, it's just been getting better. So
new appreciation on life, a new lease on life.
yeah.
Here's what we have. So prepare for the holidays. And we'll see you next week, Jim.
Okay, very good, very good, and good tidings to everyone. Thank you, Jimmy.
Happy holidays.